We had a bit of a setback with the Soundcraft power cable, but in the meantime we've been getting the studio ready for recording in other ways.
Our main concern right now is figuring out how to wire everything up so that we can access all our gear efficiently without consuming a lot of time.
We got to make sure that we have a very logical, planned way of getting signal into the board and back out to our outboard gear and then back into the computer and then back to the speakers and their monitors and their headphone mixes and all that shit.
The idea of doing any sort of recording without having some sort of infrastructure to support that is just a nightmare.
Our friend Ross is an engineer. He came by the studio when it was in the construction phase.
Just to kind of check it out of curiosity.
It's a pretty cool space. I think it's going to be really vibey.
You know, he kind of inspired us and provided us some insight.
We talked to Ross a lot about what type of wiring we want to use in the space.
Don't cheap out on the wire though. Like if you cheap out on the patch bay, get like Mogami wire or, you know, something comparable.
Ross is also a big advocate for us building our own cabling. He was able to give us approximate costs of how much actual raw Mogami cabling would be and how much we'd be looking at paying per connector. Technical figures that we really hadn't looked into.
And you can find like Mogami snakes like 20 feet for like $40.
Whoa,
and that's 8 balanced on either side. So then you just have to tip them off and then you're good to go. So
That's great. It's good to know.
I think we need to do a little research into taking that approach.
yeah.
He gave us some good advice about cabling. You can either spend a shit ton of money and buy like super fancy cables, or you can like actually just do them yourself. So he suggested that we build our own cables.
That's just super time consuming, right?
Yeah.
Like it's but if you've got lots of bodies around, I think you'll be fine.
We've been doing everything ourselves so far, so it would only make sense that we build our own cables too.
So we're building patch cords for the studio right now. It's a cheap solution, a lot more cost effective for us as opposed to just ordering everything. We can order parts and build it ourselves and save some money. So we chose to solder all of our cables as it is most cost effective. It's just a good skill to have when you're in the studio. If something breaks, you can repair it yourself as opposed to having to pay someone to do it. This is just a basic instrument cable, unbalanced, so there's only 2 wires. We're just using a pretty standard soldering iron here, set to about 650 degrees Fahrenheit, and we're using a lead-free solder. So I'm tinning the tip right now and just preparing the soldering iron for the solder joint. And you place your iron on the joint to heat it up, and then add your solder. And there you go. And you always want to make sure that your joint is shiny as opposed to cloudy. Otherwise, if it's cloudy, then your iron wasn't hot enough. If it's not shiny, it's called a cold solder joint. You don't want cold solder joints because it won't carry the signal as well. Now we'll add our ground. Well, it seems like a daunting or complicated process. It's actually quite simple. It's just time consuming and requires some attention, but in the end, we'll end up with all our own cabling that we've built and we'll save some money. So now that we've soldered our 2 connection points, we just have to put the cover onto the cable and we're done.
While we've been working on getting the place wired up, we got an invite from our friends Ian and Leon, who are building a new studio in the east end of the city.
I personally was kind of like flabbergasted. I was like, wow, they are mid-construction, just like we are, but it was just next level.
They're still finishing touches. We won't officially be open, like website name, opening party, till April.
You see some parallels between their space and ours, and you see the same struggles that they're having.
We're most of the way there, but the way you can see, there's a whole bunch of ugly snakes coming out of the bottom.
Everything from not being on schedule to trying to schedule like sessions with like the gear that you have and piecing things together and making it work.
Imagine if we knew what we were actually in for when we started.
We were supposed to open in July.
Yeah, we had sessions booked in July.
It was nice to see something that was unfinished and reflect on what we were doing.
Shit, being in this place, like, puts every last bit of our like craftsmanship to shame. I'm curious to kind of know about like the evolution of your project.
The first one was kind of similar to what you guys have. It was my buddy bought a house. So his garage is like 30 feet long by 12 feet wide kind of thing.
Leon actually has experience building up a few different studios.
And he started very similar to us with a broken down shithole of a shed.
So I had this double layer drywall, pink, nasty like hellhole. And then I built the 2 separate rooms. Like at 3 in the morning, we'd be jamming like crazy loud noise rock bands.
Seeing where he's gone from there to build their new studio that's incredibly beautiful and state of the art is very encouraging.
We left there with a sense of optimism and, you know, we got some great advice and we're ready to get some bands in here and make some fucking noise.
My band shaking hands and rehearsing in here, which is really nice. The band is like really happy to be a part of the community and super excited to kind of like make the place their own home in a sense. Construction was tiring, but it's done. And now, you know, every day space gets closer and closer to recording bands.